I stood on the threshold of the house where I had built a family for 30 years, holding a key that no longer fit the lock. "We don't need you, Edward," my wife Carol said with a smile as if she were joking, but her eyes were cold. Everyone agreed, I was a stranger at my own daughter's birthday party. Anger and pain pushed me to cancel the family trip, but a text from my sister changed everything. One line and I realized that the truth I had been hiding from myself would destroy us all. But was I ready to accept it? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The key didn't fit. I stood on the porch of the house I'd called home for 30 years, twisting the metal in the lock, but it refused to turn. My breath caught, a sharp sting in my chest, as if the house itself had decided I no longer belonged. Inside, laughter spilled through the cracked window, bright, carefree, the kind you'd expect at a birthday party. Emily's birthday. My daughter. The balloons bobbed above the dining table, their strings curling like question marks. I'd spent hours picking them out, matching the pinks and golds to her favorite dress. Now, they mocked me. Carol's voice cut through the chatter. "Edward, you're late." She stood in the doorway, her smile tight, like a seam about to split. Her eyes, though those were cold, glinting like the wineglass she held. Guests milled behind her, neighbors and friends, their faces a blur of forced cheer. I clutched the gift bag, its tissue paper crinkling under my fingers, the sound louder than it should have been. "I got held up at work," I said, my voice low, hoping to slip past the tension. But Carol stepped closer, her perfume sharp, like a warning. "We all agreed," she said, her smile widening, "you're not welcome at Emily's birthday." The words landed like a slap. The guests froze. A woman, Mrs. Larson from next door, coughed, her eyes darting to the floor. Emily stood by the cake, her back to me, her shoulders stiff. My throat tightened. "Nice to know," I managed, my sarcasm thin, barely masking the ache. Carol tilted her head, as if she'd just commented on the weather. "It's for the best," she added, then turned back to the party, her dress swishing like a curtain closing. I didn't move. Not at first. The gift bag dangled from my hand, its tissue spilling out, like a ball gown left in the rain. I'd spent weeks choosing Emily's present, a locket with a photo of us from her first trip to the lake. She'd been 6, her laughter louder than the waves. Now, that memory felt like a lie. My chest burned, a mix of shame and fury, the kind that makes your hands shake. I wanted to storm inside, demand answers, but the silence of the guests pinned me in place. They knew. They all knew. "Edward, you okay?" Mr. Larson's voice broke the quiet, hesitant, like he was approaching a stray dog. I didn't look at him. "Fine," I said, the word sharp enough to cut. I turned, the porch creaking under my weight, and walked to my car. The key to the house, useless now, bit into my palm as I gripped it. I tossed the gift bag onto the lawn. It landed near the mailbox, its ribbons fluttering, abandoned. Let them clean it up. In the car, the air was stale, heavy with the scent of old coffee cups. My phone buzzed, lighting up the dashboard. 16 missed calls. All from Margie, my sister. I ignored them, my fingers trembling as I opened the travel app. The Hawaii trip, our family vacation, planned for months, was still there, booked under my name. $63,345 for flights, hotels, the works. I stared at the screen, Carol's words looping in my head. "You're not welcome." My thumb hovered over the cancel button. I pressed it. The confirmation chimed, cold and final. I transferred the refund to my account, each tap a small act of defiance. Let them stay here. Let them rot. The phone buzzed again. A text from Margie. One line, stark against the screen, "Emily isn't your daughter." My stomach dropped. The words didn't make sense, not at first. I read them again, then a third time, each syllable a needle under my skin. My hand tightened on the steering wheel, the leather creaking. Margie lived an hour away. In a crumbling cottage she refused to sell. She'd know something. She always did. The engine roared as I pulled onto the street, the house shrinking in the rearview mirror. I didn't look back. Rain slashed across the windshield, blurring the road into streaks of gray. The wipers groaned, too slow to keep up, and the headlights barely cut through the dark. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles pale, as the highway stretched toward Margie's cottage. Chicago's suburbs faded behind me, their tidy lawns replaced by gnarled trees and potholed asphalt. The car smelled of damp leather and regret. My phone sat silent in the cup holder, Margie's text still burning in my mind. "Emily isn't your daughter." I didn't reply. I couldn't. Not yet. The rain drummed harder, a relentless rhythm that pulled me back to 1987. Carol and I had been married 2 years, living in a shoebox apartment downtown, the kind with peeling wallpaper and a radiator that hissed like an angry cat. She'd been different then, her laugh bright, her eyes warm, like she saw me and only me. We'd dance in the kitchen, her bare feet on the linoleum, my hands on her waist. But there were nights she'd come home late, her coat damp, her smile a little too quick. I never asked where she'd been. I told myself it didn't matter. One night stood out, sharp as a photograph. A party at some loft in Wicker Park, the air thick with cigarette smoke and jazz. Carol wore a red dress, the kind that turned heads. She danced with James Reed, a lawyer with slick hair and a laugh that carried. Her hand rested on his shoulder too long, her head tilted back as she laughed at something he said. I stood by the bar, my whiskey sweating in my hand, watching. She caught my eye once, waved, then turned back to him. "Just friends," she said later, her voice light, brushing it off. I nodded, swallowing the doubt. I always did. The memory dissolved as a truck roared past, spraying water across my windshield. I swerved, cursing under my breath. The key to the house, still in my pocket, pressed against my thigh. I pulled it out, its edges dull, flecked with rust. When had that happened? It used to shine, back when I'd unlocked the door to Carol's smile, to Emily's toddling steps. Now, it was as useless as I felt. I tossed it onto the passenger seat, where it landed with a soft clink. I stopped at a gas station, the neon sign buzzing like a trapped insect. The rain had eased, but the air was heavy, clinging to my skin. I leaned against the car, my breath visible in the cold. Margie's text glowed on my phone. "Emily isn't your daughter." The words twisted, sharp and wrong. Emily had my eyes, didn't she? The way she squinted when she laughed, the way she chewed her lip when nervous, those were mine. Or were they? Doubt crept in, cold as the drizzle on my neck. I climbed back into the car, the door slamming harder than I meant. The cottage came into view an hour later, a sagging shape against the trees. Its windows glowed faintly, like eyes half open. Margie was awake. Of course she was. She never slept when there was truth to spill. I parked, the gravel crunching under the tires, and stepped out. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. My boots sank into the mud as I walked to the porch, the key still in my pocket, a weight I couldn't shake. The door loomed ahead, its paint peeling like old skin. I raised my hand to knock, my heart pounding, but I froze. A sound came from inside, a shuffle, then silence. I stood there, rain dripping from my coat, wondering if I was ready for what waited on the other side. The door creaked as Margie opened it, her silhouette framed by the dim light of a single lamp. She smelled of whiskey and old wool, her sweater frayed at the cuffs. "Took you long enough," she said, her voice rough, like gravel underfoot. I stepped inside, the air thick with the musty scent of damp wood and stacked newspapers. The cottage was a mess of books spilled across the floor, a cracked mug teetered on a chair. The lamp swayed slightly, its bulb humming, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. My boots left wet prints on the warped floorboards. "Sit," Margie said, pointing to a table cluttered with envelopes and ash. I didn't move. Her eyes, sharp despite the haze of liquor, locked onto mine. "You read my text." It wasn't a question. I nodded, my throat dry. The words "Emily isn't your daughter" hung between us, heavy as the silence that followed. Margie turned, rummaging through a cardboard box, her hands trembling but deliberate. "You always ignored the truth, Edward," she said, her back to me. "Even when it stared you in the face." "Don't," I said, my voice low, a warning I didn't feel. My chest tightened, like a fist closing around my ribs. She pulled out a photograph, its edges curled, and slapped it on the table. Carol and James Reed, 1987, their smiles bright against the blur of a crowded room. Carol's hand rested on his arm, her bracelet glinting, the one I'd given her that Christmas. My stomach twisted. You knew, Margie said, her voice cutting through the hum of the lamp. You knew she was stepping out with him. That's a lie. The words came too fast, too loud. I stepped back, my heel catching on a rug. Margie didn't flinch. Is it? She asked, leaning forward, her breath sharp with whiskey. She came home late, didn't she? Smelling of his cologne. And you, pathetic, pretended it was nothing. Her words hit like stones, each one heavier than the last. I wanted to shout, to call her a drunk, a liar, but my tongue felt leaden. Margie had always been brutal with the truth, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. I sank into a chair, the wood creaking under me. A memory flickered. 1992, a diner on Clark Street, Margie stirring her coffee, her voice low. Carol's not who you think, she'd said. I'd laughed it off, paid the bill, and left. Now, that moment felt like a warning I'd ignored. My eyes fell to the photograph again. Carol's smile, James's hand on her waist. The bracelet. My bracelet. My fingers curled into fists, nails biting into my palms. Emily's mine, I said, but the words sounded hollow, like a prayer I didn't believe. Margie snorted, tossing the photo closer. Look at her eyes. Not yours. His. I stood, the chair scraping against the floor, nearly tipping. Enough, I snapped, grabbing the photo without thinking. The door was behind me, its hinges groaning as I yanked it open. The night air hit my face, cold and damp, but it didn't clear the fog in my head. Margie's voice followed me. Run all you want, Edward. Truth doesn't care. I stumbled to the car, the photo crumpled in my hand. The gravel crunched under my boots, the sound sharp against the silence of the forest. Inside the car, I smoothed the photo against the steering wheel. Carol's bracelet caught my eye again, but something else did too, a date scrawled on the back. July 1987. 9 months before Emily was born. My breath hitched. I started the engine, the headlights slicing through the dark. Carol was home. She'd have answers. She'd have to. The house was too quiet when I stepped inside, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. The living room smelled of lemon cleaner, sharp and sterile, as if Carol had scrubbed away the party's warmth. Fairy lights hung limp along the mantel, unplugged, their bulbs dark like burned-out stars. The dining table, once crowded with balloons and laughter, stood bare, a single crumpled napkin forgotten in its center. I clutched the photograph from Margie's cottage, its edges biting into my palm. Carol was there, in the corner, folding a tablecloth with precise, practiced movements. Her hair was pinned up, not a strand out of place, but her shoulders were stiff, as if she'd sensed me before I spoke. Carol, I said, my voice rough, like I'd swallowed sand. She didn't turn, just smoothed the cloth, her fingers lingering on its edge. We need to talk. The words felt heavy, each one a stone dropped into the stillness. She glanced over her shoulder, her smile faint, the kind you'd give a stranger. About what, Edward? Her tone was light, but her eyes narrowed, sharp as glass. I stepped closer, the floorboards creaking under my boots. The photograph burned in my hand, but I kept it hidden, not ready to show my cards. James Reed, I said, the name tasting bitter. Her hands paused, just for a second, before she resumed folding. What about him? She asked, her voice smooth, like she was humoring a child. I swallowed, my throat tight. You were close. Back then. The accusation hung there, fragile, and I hated how small it sounded. Carol turned fully now, leaning against the table, her arms crossed. You're digging up ghosts, Edward. Why now? Her words were calm, but there was a flicker in her expression, something like fear, or maybe defiance. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles whitening. Don't play games, I said, my voice low, trembling with the effort to stay steady.
I know about you and him. In '87.
Her laugh was sharp, a blade slicing through the air.
Know what, exactly? That I had friends? That I lived a life before you decided to check out of this family?
Her words stung, each one a needle under my skin. I wanted to shout, to throw the photograph at her, but my hand stayed frozen. She stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming, sweet and suffocating. You were always a guest here, Edward, she said, her voice dropping, cold as winter.
Never really one of us.
My chest ached, like someone had punched through my ribs. I opened my mouth, but no words came. She was twisting it, turning my doubt against me, and I felt myself shrinking under her gaze. The photograph slipped from my hand, landing on the table with a soft thud. Carol's eyes flicked to it, then back to me, but she didn't pick it up. You're tired, she said, almost gentle now, but it was a lie.
Go rest. We'll talk later. It wasn't an invitation, it was a dismissal.
I turned, my legs heavy, and moved toward the stairs. My foot caught the edge of a picture frame on the floor, Emily's photo, the one from her 10th birthday, her smile wide under a party hat. It clattered, the glass cracking.
I didn't stop to pick it up.
In our bedroom, I grabbed a duffel bag, shoving in a few shirts, a pair of jeans. My hands shook, the zipper catching as I yanked it closed. Back downstairs, I paused at the front door, my eyes catching a letter on the hall table. A lawyer's logo gleamed in the corner, but I didn't touch it. Carol's voice echoed in my head, her words a weight I couldn't shake. I stepped outside, the night air biting my skin, and walked into the dark. Emily's face burned into my mind. Morning light poured through the cafe windows, painting the wooden tables in shades of gold. The air buzzed with the clink of spoons, the hiss of the espresso machine, the low hum of voices blending into a comforting drone. I sat in a corner booth, my hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold. The smell of fresh pastries clung to the air, sweet and warm, but it did nothing to loosen the knot in my chest. Emily had agreed to meet me, her text short and clipped, fine.
9 a.m. Java stop. I'd spent the night in a motel, staring at the ceiling, replaying Carol's words, Margie's text, the photograph. Now, I waited, my fingers tracing the edge of a child's drawing I'd found in my coat pocket, Emily's, from years ago, a wobbly heart with daddy scrawled inside. She walked in at 9:03, her coat slung over one arm, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looked like Carol, the same sharp cheekbones, the same way of tilting her head when she scanned a room. But her eyes, those were softer, or maybe I just wanted them to be. She spotted me, hesitated, then slid into the booth across from me. Hey, she said, her voice flat, her gaze fixed on the menu. I forced a smile. Hey, Em. Thanks for coming.
She didn't look up, just nodded, her fingers twisting the edge of the laminated card. The waitress came, and Emily ordered a latte, her words quick, like she was eager to fill the silence. I cleared my throat, searching for a way in. I'm sorry about the trip, I said, my voice low, careful.
Canceling it. I didn't mean to hurt you.
Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp and cold. Didn't you? She asked, her tone cutting.
You knew it was my birthday, Dad. You knew how much it meant.
The word dad landed like a stone, heavy with accusation. I leaned back, my chest tight, the drawing crinkling in my pocket.
I thought I started, but she cut me off. You thought about yourself. Like always.
Her voice cracked. Just a little, and I saw the hurt beneath her anger. I wanted to tell her everything, Margie's text, the photograph, the truth about her mother, but the words stuck in my throat. She was hurting, and I couldn't add to it.
Not now.
Em, I love you, I said instead, the words clumsy, raw. She laughed, a short, bitter sound.
Love doesn't ruin things, Dad.
The waitress set down her latte, the foam trembling in the cup. We sat in silence, the cafe's noise swelling around us. I pulled out the drawing, smoothing it on the table. Found this, I said, my voice soft.
You made it when you were 6.
Her eyes flicked to it, then away, but her fingers tightened on her spoon. Keep it, she said, standing abruptly. Her latte sat untouched, steam curling from its surface like a ghost.
I have to go.
She walked out, her steps quick, her coat trailing behind her like a shadow. I stayed, the drawing warm under my fingers. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike, her laughter ringing through the park, her small hands gripping the handlebars.
Had I been enough? The question gnawed at me, sharp and relentless.
I paid the bill, stepped outside, the city air cool against my face. Across the street, a man in a gray coat caught my eye. James Reed, his profile unmistakable.
My heart lurched.
I started toward him, but he turned, disappearing into the crowd, leaving only the echo of his footsteps. The park was alive with the rustle of leaves, the air crisp with the scent of cut grass and earth. Children laughed in the distance, their voices weaving through the creak of swings and the soft thud of a soccer ball. I walked along a gravel path, my boots crunching, Emily's drawing still in my pocket, its edges worn from my touch. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows that danced across my hands. I'd come here with Emily years ago, pushing her on the swings, her giggles louder than the wind. Now, the memory felt like a weight, pressing against my ribs, reminding me of all I'd lost. I spotted him before I mentored James Reed, sitting on a bench, a newspaper folded in his lap. His hair was thinner now, gray at the temples, but his posture was the same, upright, like he was waiting for a meeting. My pulse quickened, a mix of anger and something softer, like nostalgia for a friend I'd once trusted. I approached, my step slow, the keys in my pocket jangling faintly. "James," I said, my voice steady but low. He looked up, his eyes widening for a split second before his smile slid into place. "Easy, practiced." "Edward," he said, folding the paper.
"Been a while."
His voice was smooth, but his hands fidgeted, adjusting his glasses. I sat on the bench, leaving a gap between us, the wood cool under my thighs. "Yeah," I said, my gaze fixed on a tree across the path, its branches swaying.
"A long while."
Silence settled, heavy, broken only by the distant squeal of a child. I wanted to ask about Carol, about 1987, about the truth, but the words felt too big, too raw. "Nice day," James said, his tone forced, like he was filling a void.
"You still in the old neighborhood?" I nodded, my jaw tight.
"Still there."
Another pause, longer this time.
I turned to him, my voice sharper than I intended. "You and Carol," I said, the words spilling out.
"What was it, James? Back then?"
His smile faltered, his fingers tightening on the newspaper. "Old times, Ed," he said, his laugh thin, nervous. "We were all young."
"You know how it was." "Do I?"
I pressed, leaning closer, my voice low. His eyes darted away, toward the path, the trees, anywhere but me. "You're chasing shadows," he said, standing abruptly, brushing imaginary dust from his coat.
"Let it go."
He started to walk, his steps quick, but I stood too, my hand closing around the keys in my pocket.
"What happened with her?" I called after him.
He didn't turn, his silhouette shrinking against the green, swallowed by the trees. I sank back onto the bench, my breath uneven. A glint in the grass caught my eye, a coin, old and tarnished, half buried in the dirt. I picked it up, its surface cold against my palm. It reminded me of a day in '85, James and I at a jeweler's, picking out Carol's engagement ring.
His laugh easy as he clapped me on the back. He'd been my friend.
Now, he was a stranger. I turned, noticing something on the bench, a handkerchief, its corner embroidered with Carol's initials.
My stomach twisted.
I picked it up, the fabric soft, and sat there, the coin heavy in one hand, the handkerchief in the other, wondering what I'd missed all those years ago. The motel room smelled of mildew and cheap air freshener, a cloying mix that clung to the back of my throat. The walls, papered in a faded floral pattern, peeled at the corners, curling like the edges of a forgotten book. A neon sign buzzed outside, its pink glow flickering through the blinds, painting the room in pulses of light and shadow. I sat on the edge of the bed, its springs groaning under my weight, my duffel bag open at my feet. The keys to my car, useless now, like the ones to the house, lay on the nightstand, glinting faintly. My hands felt heavy, as if the weight of the day had settled into my bones, dragging me down into the worn mattress. I reached into the bag, my fingers brushing past crumpled shirts and a spare pair of socks. There, at the bottom, was a folded piece of paper, its edges softened by time. I pulled it out, the creases crackling as I smoothed it on my knee. A letter, written in my uneven scrawl, dated 10 years ago, Emily's 10th birthday. Dear Em, it began, you're growing so fast, and I'm so proud. I'd meant to give it to her, to slip it into her birthday card, but I never did. The words felt too raw, too exposed, like peeling back my skin to show the mess underneath. I read it now, my eyes stinging, each line a reminder of the father I'd wanted to be. The room was quiet, save for the hum of a mini fridge in the corner, its rattle like a heartbeat struggling to keep up. I leaned back, the headboard creaking, and let my mind wander. I'd wanted to be a writer once, back when my hair was thicker and my dreams sharper. I'd sit in coffee shops, a notebook open, scribbling stories about men who broke free, who lived without regret. The smell of roasted beans, the clink of cups, the hum of conversation, it had felt like possibility. But then came Carol, then Emily, and I traded those pages for paychecks, for a mortgage, for a life I thought they needed. Had it been worth it? The question gnawed at me, relentless, like a dog with a bone. I grabbed a motel notepad from the drawer, its pages yellowed, and started a new letter. I'm sorry I wasn't enough. The pen scratched, ink bleeding into the thin paper. I wrote about the trip I'd cancelled, about the pain in her eyes at the cafe, about the truth I couldn't say. My hand shook, the words blurring. I was never good enough, I whispered, the sound swallowed by the room's stillness. I tore the paper, the pieces fluttering to the floor like ash. What was the point? She wouldn't read it. She didn't want me. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. I stared at it, my pulse quickening. Margie? Carol? Or someone else, dragging me back to the mess I'd left? I let it ring, the sound sharp against the silence, until it stopped. The neon sign flickered again, its reflection pooling in a puddle outside, like a dream slipping away. I stood, my knees stiff, and walked to the window. The parking lot was empty, but a car rolled by slowly, its headlights dim. It paused at the edge of the lot, then cut its lights, blending into the dark. I gripped the curtain, my breath shallow, wondering who was out there, watching. Morning light filtered through the grimy windows of Margie's cottage, casting pale streaks across the cluttered floor. The air was thick with the scent of burnt coffee and the faint tang of whiskey, a combination that made my stomach churn. Piles of newspapers teetered against the walls, their edges curling like waves frozen in time. Margie stood by the counter, pouring coffee into a chipped mug, her hair a messy knot, her slippers scuffing the worn linoleum. She didn't look at me as I stepped inside, but her shoulders tensed, like she'd been expecting this visit since I'd left. Back so soon, she said, her voice rough, laced with a sarcasm that didn't reach her eyes. I closed the door, its hinges groaning, and stood there, my hands shoved into my pockets. The keys inside jingled faintly, a reminder of the life I no longer fit into. I need to know, I said, my words clipped, each one a step toward a truth I wasn't sure I wanted. Margie turned, her mug steaming, her gaze steady but tired. Know what, Ed? You've got all the pieces. Her tone was blunt, but her hands trembled, betraying her. I stepped closer, the floor creaking under my boots. You knew about Carol and James. 4 years. Why didn't you tell me? My voice cracked, anger bubbling up like oil in a hot pan. Margie set her mug down, the clink loud in the quiet. You didn't want to hear it, she said, her eyes meeting mine, unflinching. You built a shrine to that woman, and I wasn't gonna burn it down. Her words hit hard, each one a hammer against the fragile walls I'd built around my life. I clenched my fists, the keys biting into my palm. You had no right to decide that, I snapped, my voice rising. 20 years, Margie. You let me live a lie. She flinched, just barely, but didn't look away. I tried, she said, softer now, her voice fraying at the edges. Back in '92, I told you to watch her. You laughed. Said I was jealous. A memory flickered, Margie at a diner, her coffee cold, her warnings brushed off like lint. I'd been so sure of Carol then. So blind. Margie turned, pulling a drawer open with a screech. She tossed a postcard onto the table, its corners bent, a beach scene faded to gray.
Found this last year, she said. From Carol. To James. Read it. I grabbed it, the paper brittle under my fingers. Carol's handwriting looped across the back, casual, intimate. Miss you. Let's meet soon. Dated 1990. My throat tightened, like a rope pulling taut. You kept this? I asked, my voice low, shaking. Margie nodded, her eyes distant. Thought you'd need it someday. I wanted to scream, to tear the postcard to shreds, but I stuffed it into my pocket instead. The air felt too thick, the walls too close. I turned, yanking the door open, its slam echoing as I stepped into the cold morning. In the car, I sat, the postcard burning against my thigh. My phone glowed with a missed call, an unfamiliar number, but the voicemail icon blinked. The lawyer. My stomach twisted, a mix of dread and curiosity. I didn't play it. Not yet. The engine hummed as I pulled onto the road, the cottage fading in the rearview, Margie's words still ringing in my ears. The lawyer's office was a sterile box of glass and steel, its air sharp with the scent of toner and fresh paper. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, glinting off a polished desk stacked with folders. The hum of an air conditioner filled the silence, a low drone that made the room feel colder than it was. I sat across from the lawyer, a man in a crisp suit, his face as bland as the beige walls behind him. His nameplate read Thomas Grayson, ESQ, the letters gleaming like a challenge. My hands rested on my knees, the postcard from Margie a quiet weight in my pocket, its presence grounding me as I waited for him to speak. Mr. Clark, Grayson said, his voice smooth, practiced, thank you for coming. He slid a folder across the desk, its edges crisp, the label bearing my name in bold type. Your wife filed these last week. I opened it, the paper cool under my fingers. Divorce papers. Carol's signature curled at the bottom, elegant and final, like a door locking shut. The words blurred irreconcilable differences, division of assets, but their meaning was clear. She was done. We were done. My chest tightened, but not with pain. Something else. Relief, maybe, like a knot loosening after years of strain. I looked up, meeting Grayson's eyes. She wants this quick, he said, his tone neutral, as if discussing the weather. She's asked to meet, to discuss terms. I nodded, my throat dry. A memory surfaced, Carol slipping off her wedding ring 2 summers ago, leaving it on the kitchen counter like a forgotten dish. I pretended not to notice, just as I pretended not to see her late nights, her silences, her distance. Now, it was all laid bare, inked on these pages. I picked up the pen. Its weight surprising, and signed my name. The ink smudged, a faint smear on my thumb, like a bruise. It's done, I whispered, more to myself than to him. Grayson nodded, stacking the papers with a soft tap. She'll be in touch, he said, standing, his hand extended. I shook it, his grip firm, impersonal. The postcard shifted in my pocket as I stood, a reminder of the truth I still carried. I walked to the door, its hinges silent, and stepped into the hallway, the click of the latch behind me soft but final. The elevator ride down was quiet, the numbers ticking like a countdown to a new life I hadn't chosen. Outside, the city buzzed, horns blaring, pedestrians weaving, the air thick with exhaust and possibility. I checked my phone, the screen lighting up with a new message. From Carol. We need to talk. Tonight. Our place. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I didn't respond. The postcard pressed against my thigh, its words a whisper I couldn't ignore. I started walking, the city swallowing me whole, Carol's message glowing like a beacon I wasn't sure I wanted to follow. The house felt like a stranger's when I stepped inside, its warmth drained, its walls bare where family photos once hung. The living room smelled of melted wax, a single candle flickering on the coffee table, its flame trembling like a heartbeat on the verge of stopping. The fairy lights, the balloons, the traces of Emily's birthday, they were gone, swept away, leaving only the faint creak of floorboards under my boots. Carol sat on the sofa, her posture perfect, her hands folded in her lap. She wore a cream sweater, her hair pinned tightly, but her eyes betrayed her, glassy, caught between defiance and something softer, maybe regret.
I stood by the door, the postcard from Margie sharp against my thigh, its edges digging through my pocket.
"Edward," she said, her voice smooth but brittle, like thin ice. "You came."
I nodded, my throat tight, and moved to the armchair across from her.
The distance between us felt wider than the room.
"You wanted to talk," I said, my words low, each one measured to keep the anger at bay. Her fingers twitched, brushing the sofa's seam.
"Yes," she said, her gaze flicking to the candle. "About us. About everything."
The word hung there, heavy, loaded with years of silences.
I leaned forward, my hands clasped.
"Tell me about James," I said, my voice steady but sharp, cutting through the quiet.
Her eyes snapped to mine, wide for a moment, then narrowed.
"What's there to tell?" she asked, her tone too light, too practiced. I pulled the postcard from my pocket, holding it between us like a blade.
"This," I said, tossing it onto the table. The candlelight caught its faded beach scene, making it glow.
Carol's breath hitched, but she didn't touch it.
"You're digging up old dirt," she said, her voice rising, cracking. "Why now?"
"Because I deserve the truth," I said, my fists clenching.
"Was there something with him? In '87? After?"
The question spilled out, raw, unstoppable. Carol stood, her movements sharp, and paced to the window.
"You want truth?"
she snapped, turning to face me, her eyes blazing.
"Fine. Yes, there was James.
Because you were never here, Edward.
You saw your perfect family, not me. I needed someone who saw me."
Her voice broke, a sob swallowed by fury, and the candle flickered, its flame nearly gone. I sat back, my chest hollow, her words slicing through years of denial.
"I'd known, deep down, hadn't I?"
The late nights, the quick smiles, the way she'd turn away. But hearing it, her voice raw, unfiltered, felt like a weight lifting, not falling.
"I saw you," I said quietly, almost to myself. "I just didn't know how to keep you."
She froze, her hands trembling, then sank onto the sofa, the fight draining from her. The candle sputtered out, a wisp of smoke curling upward, marking the end.
I stood, my legs steady for the first time in days. "We're done," I said, not cruelly, just fact.
Carol didn't look up, her hands covering her face.
I walked to the door, its hinges silent as I opened it, the night air cool against my skin.
Outside, the street was dark, the neighborhood asleep, but a child's bicycle leaned against a fence,
its handlebar tassels fluttering.
Emily's face flashed in my mind, her laugh, her small hand in mine, and I stopped, the postcard still in my pocket, wondering what she'd say if she knew. The park was a soft hum of life, its paths lined with trees shedding leaves in slow, golden spirals. The air carried the scent of damp earth and fading summer, mingling with the distant laughter of children on the playground. I sat on a bench, its wood worn smooth by years of visitors, my notebook open on my lap. The postcard from Margie lay beside it, a quiet reminder of the truth I'd carried for days. I'd come here to think, to decide to tell Emily about her mother and James, or let it stay buried. The question pressed against my ribs, heavy but not crushing, like a stone I'd learned to carry. I closed my eyes, and memories of Emily flooded in. Her first wobbly steps in this park, her squeals as I pushed her on the swings, the way she'd cling to my shoulders when she fell. I'd bandaged her scrapes, braided her hair, stayed up late to help with math homework. She was mine, not because of blood, but because of those moments, stitched together over years.
Telling her now about James, about Carol's betrayal, would unravel her world, not mine.
I opened the notebook, my pen steady, and started to write.
"Dear Em," I began, the words flowing, each one a thread tying me to her.
"I'm sorry for the distance, for the mistakes, for not being the father you deserved. I wrote about the trip I'd canceled, the pain I'd caused, the love that never wavered.
You're my daughter, always, no matter what."
The words felt true, solid, like a house built to last. I whispered the last line aloud, "You'll always be mine," my voice blending with the rustle of leaves. A breeze stirred, lifting a leaf from the tree above, letting it drift to the ground, a quiet release. I tore the page out, folding it carefully, and slipped it into an envelope. My fingers lingered on the seal, the weight of the decision settling over me.
I wouldn't send it, not yet.
But writing it had loosened something, a knot I'd carried too long. A young family passed by, the parents laughing as their toddler chased a squirrel. The mother's smile reminded me of Carol's, years ago, before the silences grew.
I didn't flinch at the memory. It was just a moment, not a chain.
I stood, tucking the envelope into my jacket, the postcard left on the bench.
I didn't need it anymore.
The park stretched out, its paths winding toward the city, and I started walking, my steps light, unburdened.
My phone buzzed in my pocket, the screen glowing with a message from Emily. Can we talk? My heart skipped, but I didn't open it. Not yet.
The sun warmed my face, the leaves crunched underfoot, and I kept walking, the envelope a quiet promise against my chest. Morning light spilled through the window of my new apartment, a small space with bare walls and the clean scent of fresh paint. The kitchen counter held a coffee maker, its gurgle filling the air with a warm, grounding aroma. Boxes sat half unpacked, their contents spilling across the floor: books, a chipped mug, a photo of Emily at 6, her grin wide under a straw hat. I stood by the table, my hands steady, the envelope from the park tucked into a drawer. The apartment was mine, a blank slate, and for the first time in years, that felt like enough. I knelt by a box, pulling out an old notebook, its cover faded, its pages filled with half-finished stories from a life I'd shelved. I'd wanted to be a writer once, to weave worlds from words, to leave something behind. The dream had slipped away, buried under bills and expectations, but now it stirred, fragile but alive. I ran my thumb over the pages, the ink smudged but legible, and smiled.
Maybe I'd try again. Maybe I'd write something true.
Outside, the courtyard was small but green, a patch of earth waiting for care. I'd bought a sapling the day before, a thin maple with delicate leaves. I carried it out, the soil cool under my nails as I dug. The tree fit perfectly, its roots settling into the ground, a quiet promise of growth. I patted the dirt, my hands stained, and stood back, the morning breeze brushing my face. Emily's laugh echoed in my mind, her small hands digging in the garden. Years ago, her face smeared with mud.
The memory didn't hurt.
It warmed me, like the sun on my shoulders.
Back inside, I checked my phone. Emily's message glowed on the screen. Can we talk?
I read it aloud, her words soft, like the voice I'd heard in this house when she was small. I've been waiting, I whispered, a smile tugging at my lips.
I didn't reply, not yet.
The moment felt too big, too delicate, like a seed just planted. I'd answer soon, when I was ready, when the words felt right. For now, I was content to let it sit, a possibility I could trust. I sat at the table, the notebook open, a pen in my hand. The apartment was quiet, but not empty, filled with the hum of a new life, my life. I wrote a single sentence, the words flowing like water over stones. The man woke to a world he no longer knew, but he was not afraid. I paused, the pen warm in my grip, and looked out the window. The sapling swayed, its leaves catching the light, and I kept writing, each word a step toward something new. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments.
To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.